Hello and welcome to the Christian Fantasy and Sci-Fi Podcast, where we talk about anything and everything fantasy and science fiction. Your host is Matt Crosswhite, and the subject matter expert is Josiah Marshall. And here we go.
Hello and welcome back. We're glad to have you with us today. Matt is not available again this week, but that's all right. We do have another special guest with us, and I'm honored and privileged to be able to say it's another brother of mine. This is Jonathon Marshall. He owns and operates Marshall Custom Models, and it has been around for a number of years now, and he has built up quite the clientele. And Jonathon, you've been building models for a while, haven't you?
Yeah, I've been building models technically since I was a kid. My first snap together, I think it was like 8 or 9 years old when I got it. But then I started getting into this higher end modeling about 12 years ago now. And I have been obsessed ever since.
Obsessed, that's one word to put it.
That's probably the most accurate too. It's a bit of an obsession.
Well, I have to say your attention to detail is quite obvious. I remember as kids, you were able to do things with detail that baffled our minds. I remember you walking by a table one time and we were working on a puzzle. You just saw a piece and you knew exactly where it went. So you put it there and you walked off. So
yeah,
your ability to catch detail is quite impressive. And so what I'd like to do is talk to you about model building here for a minute.
Yeah.
Now, what models... What kind are these the kind of models that you find in a store?
No, not these ones. Like you can find these ships in a store. They're the regular ships, the Enterprise refit from the motion picture Wrath of Khan, stuff like that. Mm-hmm. Or the Excelsior from Search for Spock or Undiscovered Country. They're very well-known vehicles. However, It's the size that I do them in that is very uncommon, and you do not find them in stores of this size.
So what size of models are you working with?
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm staying in two realms. It's known as the 1537 scale and the 1350 scale.
Oh, wow.
I do those because the main model company in the country right now called Round 2, they own Polar Lights, AMT, they own everybody here in the States. Their main models, like the Enterprise, the Reliant, the original series, all that kind of stuff, are either 1350 scale or 1537.
Okay.
And so I am not building models that they have because I'm like, why would I? They've got them. So I'm building other models that no one else has access to that can go along with their model.
Okay.
So you can basically build your own fleet.
So for our average listener that may not know exactly what those scale numbers mean, could you give it to us in, say, a general item that we might know of today in an everyday household as to how big these models are?
Yeah. So this is going to be some really nerdy stuff. Yeah, they're fake numbers, all that, but I think it's awesome. I love it. So scaling has to deal with a part that is reduced or increased in size to a certain percentage of the real size. So the full size vehicle is known as a 1-to-1 scale. And so me doing a 350 scale means that if you took 350 of them, set them end to end, width to width, and height to height, that's how big the 1-to-1 ship would be. So the Excelsior, for example, that thing at 1/350 scale, let's see, it came out to be, that's about 300 meters. It's about, a 1-to-1 scale is about 580 to 600 meters. So that at 1/350 scale comes out to be, in the inch system, comes out to be 50 inches.
So we're talking the size of a big screen television.
Yes.
Yeah,
these are not for your novice builder.
No.
But they give you, but it complements the one 350 Enterprise that Polar Lights has. So then you can really work on your true 350 fleet.
Oh, wow.
And that's very appealing to guys, and they don't care it's 50 inches long.
Right.
But
so you'd really need some space to be able to store one of these things.
Yes, you absolutely would. And these aren't even the biggest ones I know of. One buddy of mine, he has what's known as a studio scale, and that's the size that the model was that they used for filming. They call it a studio scale.
Okay.
And that thing is 8 feet 4 inches long.
Wow.
So that's about the biggest one you can get as a consumer grade. Anything outside of that, it's going to be a very customized build.
Wow. So given that it's so customized, then I would presume then that our listeners could presume that your clients were asking for very specific things when it comes to a specific model.
Yeah. So like the Excelsior, for example, I had a group of guys contact me about that. And they were actually really simple. They said, hey, we just want the Excelsior 100% accurate to the studio model. Like, oh, okay, that's easy enough. And so I started watching the movies again a lot. Over 12 years, I've built up a fairly large portfolio of photos, behind the scene photos of the filming, the actual studio model under construction, finished, all that kind of stuff. So if I ever have a question on something, then I just open up my archive, and there it is. Okay, that's what that section of this ship looked like. So I will modify this to make it more accurate.
And you don't stick with any specific show, right? You've got several different shows of vessels that you've used and built, correct?
Yeah. So currently, they're all Star Trek except for one. I did a one-off. It was actually for a comic book. It's called the Aramis. And I had a guy contact me, same thing. He's like, hey, could you make this kit for me? He's like, I've been wanting someone to do it for years. It's just, most of the time with some of these obscure ones, a big company can't do it because there's no money in it. So they come to me and I'm like, yeah, sure. But I have the Excelsior, the Enterprise refit, or not the refit, sorry, the Enterprise E, the Reliant, and the Aramis. Okay. I'm currently working on the Stargazer, a original series Romulan bird of prey.
Oh, wow.
I'm currently working on those two right now. And the bird of prey, I'm working on that with a buddy of mine, but the Stargazer is one I'm putting together.
Okay. And have there been any other shows that you've built models of?
As far as model kits, no. But as far as building a model for a client, yes. I've done cruise ships before.
Oh, wow.
See the Black Beauty from the original TV show. I'm working on a Sea View right now. I did the UFO flying saucer from the movie The Thing.
Oh, okay.
So I basically just say, like, if it looks interesting, I want to do it. I'm really not into, we call it armor. Okay. So tanks, airplanes, that's a whole other breed of building. Okay. And it just doesn't really interest me a whole lot. But most everything in the sci-fi realm, oh yeah, I love it.
Wow. And the fact that you have found clientele, so I would imagine that the clientele that you're working with, these models don't come cheap.
No. No, but I describe it as, everyone is to each his own, right? There's some people I know who spend X amount of money on an oil painting, and X amount of money on a prop or a car. These guys, they don't have oil paintings. Most of them have the car that gets them from A to B. They want these models. They want to look at this ship in the flesh, not just on the television. So that's what they do. They spend their money on, that's their kind of art. And I'm trying to fill that void because very few guys have in the past. and a lot of them are starting to die out, and so very few are continuing to do it.
Custom model
It's
building.
really sad. Yeah.
Oh wow. How many are there left?
Well, it all depends on your skill level.
Okay.
Guys who are at a level to not only ask for a higher amount, but to also justify the higher amount, I can probably count on two hands how many guys I know in the world that are to that quality, who do this kind of stuff.
Okay.
Yeah, there aren't many of those guys left.
Okay, I see what you're saying. And so, are these quality, the quality of these models? Then, is this something you might find on a TV show?
Yeah. So, originally, back before CGI became a real big thing, this is what guys did. They had modeling departments, and it was just a bunch of nerdy guys like me, or just guys who like building things. And they would give them schematic and say, "Build this for it. We need it for the show." Okay. And they would just go build it. Wow. And then once it was finished, they'd use it for filming. But those models, known as studio models, they were not built for long-term use.
Oh,
they weren't. They weren't built to last. So an example is, in the modeling community, it's pretty well agreed upon across the board that the most beautiful model ever made was the Enterprise refit from 1978. Yeah, 1979, 8 or 9. I can't remember when motion picture came out.
What movie or show would that be part of?
That's the motion picture.
Okay.
Yeah, it's known as the most beautiful model that has ever been made.
Wow.
But they're not building a model that needs to go into the Smithsonian. They were building a model to be used for filming and then, really be discarded after that.
Sure.
So now, her last film was Undiscovered Country. Nowadays, that model was purchased by Jeffrey Bezos and is sitting in the Blue Origin lobby.
Oh,
it's fallen to pieces.
Okay.
Yeah, it's fallen to pieces. The saucer is bubbled and coming apart the seams. It's just fallen to pieces. Because, again, that model was built to be used for a specific purpose and then discarded.
Okay.
Whereas these models, the guys in my groups who we do this together, we all say that we're building a multi-decade model. Like, we're thinking 20 years down the road.
Sure.
And we're constructing these things so that 20 years down the road, you still have a model that's justified in how much you spent for it.
Oh, sure. Absolutely. So are we talking a few hundred or even as much as a few thousand for a model?
So it all depends on no, you're fine. It all depends on the artist you contact, and it depends on the ship. The Enterprise refit, which is the most popular because of the difficulty in the paint work, it is the most difficult model to put together. My current base list price on that thing is $6,000.
Okay.
That's at 1/350 scale, so it's about 36 inches long.
Oh, okay. So we're talking 3 feet long. Okay.
3 feet long, but it's a model that has accurate paint. It's the pearlescent paint that demands such a high cost for that one, because the pearlescent paint, you have to create your own way to put it on. It is extremely delicate to work with, and if you damage it, there is no, let me just dab a little bit of paint on there and we'll call it good. If you damage pearl, the only way to fix it is you have to sand it off and repaint it.
Oh man.
So yeah, on that Enterprise, it usually takes me 3 solid months just to apply the pearl paint.
And how many hours a day is that you're applying to that?
6 or 7.
Wow. So
yeah,
I've actually
a lot of work.
Yeah, and I've seen these models, and folks, you can actually see it too. We're going to definitely put his website up in a link on our podcast. But I've seen some of the details, and so you've got basically what it looked like, and you can correct me if I'm wrong. What I saw is that these are basically tiny little squares that you've painted on in different directions,
Yes.
correct?
Yes.
And so that is covering the entire ship, unless they're wanting the ship to look specific as to, I want it to look at what it looked like after the battle scene in Undiscovered Country, right?
Mm-hmm.
Then it might show a little battle damage.
Yes, but see, even there, that's when you're delving into that wasn't the same ship. So,
right.
Yeah, and
Okay.
so
Okay.
it not only was it not the same ship in Star Trek lore, it wasn't the same identical model that was used. There were so many changes that went on, and so when it comes to the refit, guys will say, "I want a refit. What should it look like? I just want it to be from, one of the Star Trek movies." I'm like, "Well, that's not. You can't really say that because this model was used in 3 movies. It went through multiple changes, different paint schemes, different mattings. Like, you actually have to go all the way down to, I want this model from this specific scene in this movie." Because they used multiple models for different views. Once ILM got their hands on it, they do what they do with all models. They throw a bunch of dirt on there and say it looks good.
Okay.
ILM is the one who built all the Star Wars models.
Oh,
And
okay. All right.
me and my buddies always joke around. It's like, you want to know how to make a Star Wars model? You put it together, make it look real pretty. You throw it down the stairs, jump on it, throw some dirt on it, and it looks perfect. That's how we describe Star Wars models.
Those ships tend to have a little bit more wear and tear on them.
Sure. but I will say they demand the highest price.
Really? Okay.
The studio model for the Enterprise refit sold at auction to Jeffrey Bezos for 1.2. Was it that? It was either 1.2 million. I think it was actually 400,000. Yeah, $400,000.
Wow.
Well, when that thing was built in 1978, they spent $250,000 on it in 1978 inflation. So you do the calculation, which I did. They spent over $1 million on that model in today's market to build the dumb thing.
Wow.
So Bezos bought it for $400,000 back in 2006, I think is when it was. That's when Christie's had their big auction.
Okay.
Greg Jean, who was a big model builder, he worked on, some guys know him. He worked on Star Wars, Hunt for Red October, Star Trek. He was just a big guy in Hollywood in the model department.
Okay.
Recently passed away, and when his family was going through his stuff, they found the master replica X-Wing that was made for A New Hope. And it's the one that when you see all the X-Wings flying towards the Death Star, it's the very front one. It is.
Wow.
It was built to the highest. Every studio does that. They say, we just need this, but then we need a couple of them that are known as master models that are more well built. They look better. They might even have lights in them. So stuff like that.
Okay.
So it was the master one from 1976 is when it was built.
Wow.
That sold at auction earlier this year, is about 2 months ago, to one of the writers of the Seinfeld show, actually.
Oh.
This model is about 24 inches square. It's not huge, but that was a studio model.
Okay.
Sold for $3.3 million.
Wow. Oh, wow. That's amazing.
I'm still surprised Lucasfilm hasn't gone after them to get that yet. I'm kind of waiting to see if they do.
Too, that went to a private collector, but then it kind of makes sense to some degree that these models, given that they were so much a part of people's childhoods, that they would definitely garner such attention, not just being the pop culture that they became, the pop culture icons that they became. You can't hear a certain sound without thinking, oh, that's a lightsaber turning on, or that's the torpedo firing, or that's the TARDIS, or whatever the case may be. Even I'm even recalling the sound of the Lost in Space ship. So
she started up.
So with that said, when you get into detail about some of these customizations, what exactly are you doing for these customers? Is it just paint, or are you doing other things to a model?
I'm doing other things. If they come to me and say, I want it 100% accurate to the movie, like, okay, but then I want a few extra things. All right. I want the thrusters to have a random firing. I want it to have firing torpedoes, firing phasers. I want it to be painted differently here, or I want this shuttle bay instead, or I want, little detail things like that.
Okay.
And, if it's feasible, I tell them, yeah. And if their desires start to move the model away from accuracy, I let them know that. And then if they say that's fine, I still want it, then okay, cool. I just build it.
Okay.
It's your model. Some of my clients have said, I don't know if you know what the studio model looked like, so I'm just going to trust you. And other clients know exactly where they want the little figure standing. Like they know every little detail that they want.
Okay, so you said torpedoes, or you're not talking about little projectiles, right?
No. You could do that with little BBs. Guys did that in the RC airplane world. It's actually kind of cool, and some guys have done it out of lasers. But I'm like, that's so dumb. You can't even see them.
Oh, sure.
No, it's just an LED that flashes.
Okay.
The same way it did on the studio model.
Okay.
They just had a little LED that would flash, and then they would add the CGI effect or the visual effects.
Sure. Okay. And then with the figures, that's not somebody that you'd think of in a Lego set that just happens to come with the kit. These are integrated, correct?
No, those are. I don't offer figures a whole lot anymore because of. If you thought pearl paint was hard, so a figure for a 1/350 scale is about 1/8 of an inch tall.
Okay.
So they're 3D printed. I mean, they're fine. They're great quality for being 3D printed.
Sure.
But you have to paint them by hand. Every one of them.
You've got a paint
100 of them. 100 of them. So you're sitting at your desk for hours painting these teeny, tiny little figures. Whew. So I don't really offer it much anymore because I just don't want to build one. Like, I don't want to paint them.
I understand.
It's so much work. It's so much work. I'm tired. I don't want to do it.
I do recall a few of the models that you've shown me in the past, and I remember one of them had an arboretum. Yes. And then what was the size of that thing? I think you had it held it up to a coin, right, or set it down next to a coin. What size of coin was that? It's
about the size of a Kennedy $50 piece.
Wow. Okay, and you put that inside of the model.
I use glass for the windows.
Okay.
So in this, it's not a matter of like, oh, you just got a plastic model, got a bottle of red Testors glue, and you just put the thing together. No. In the 12 years I've been doing this, I've had to educate myself on chemical compositions, temperature, humidity, plastic manufacturing, different recipes that were used, when they use certain recipes, when they use different ones, because this all is taken into account to build a model that's going to last 20 years.
Sure, absolutely.
And the way I build my models is I use there are a few different glues I use, but all plastic models I use a clear liquid called MEK, methyl ethyl ketone.
Okay.
It's used a lot in the acrylic world. They use it to glue acrylic together because methyl ethyl ketone actually reactivates plastic and turns it back into a liquid state.
Wow. Okay.
If you put it on two pieces of plastic, tape them together, let it sit for 24 hours, it will reactivate the plastic, turn it into a liquid. Those two pieces melt together. The two parts combine their plastic, and when that methyl ketone evaporates away and that plastic has solidified again, you don't have two parts anymore. You have one piece.
Solid piece.
It is one solid chunk of plastic.
Wow. Okay.
That when I've had to break it before, it wouldn't break at the seam. It would actually break somewhere else on the plastic.
Wow. That's some strong stuff then. That
It is very
changes changes the composition of the plastic.
Yeah, and plastic is actually very strong stuff.
Okay. Yeah.
If you build a model correctly, it's it'll function just as good, if not better, than fiberglass or carbon fiber. It's simply a matter of the environment it's going to be in, how much weight it's going to hold, how much it's going to be handled. You have to take all those into account.
Sure.
But if you build plastic correctly, it'll easily last 20 years. Easy. Yeah, I had one model come back. My client accidentally ripped one of the cords. So he sent it back. Can you fix the cord? Sure. So he sent it back. And I built that one for him 10 years ago.
Oh, wow.
And it looked just as good. There were no seam issues, no paint peeling, no light leaks, nothing. It was just as good as it was the day I gave it to him.
Now, that's interesting. You just said light leaks. So
Yes.
what exactly are you doing to put lights into these things?
Okay,
and you said you educated yourself, so this must have been a process. Yes.
It took me a solid year to really learn, because this is a very specific realm. It took me a year to really learn, that's how that's done. That's what that is. And to design a wire harness that is not only reliable, but it's safe and at the correct specs.
Okay.
Because some guys are like, you just throw a bunch of Christmas lights into the model. Well, that's what they used to do before LEDs came out. But now, so when I build an enterprise refit, I usually install about 300 feet of wire and about 100 LEDs inside.
Wow.
For various things.
Okay.
But then it's not a simple matter of, then you just turn it on, right? No, I depending on the circuit board that's used or the features that are wanted. The last one I built had 32 wires coming out of the bottom of the model that I had to wire into the stand to 6 different circuit boards to get it function correctly.
Oh, wow. So you're saying these things will stand up. This is how you have them displayed. You build a stand for them, and it's permanently attached to the model?
No. So I build mine a little different. There are a couple ways to do it. You can permanently affix a mounting rod to a model. I personally don't like doing that because then I'm kind of stuck. Like, how am I going to move this thing? It's all very vicarious on one focal point. I don't really like that. So I use 2 different kinds of plugs. It's called an aviation plug, which ironically is used in aviation. Shocking, right?
Figure.
Yeah, shocking, right? Or I use an audio plug. And what this is, an aviation plug is something that you can plug into a female port, and then it has a collar on it, and you can screw it down onto the collar. So it will not come out unless you unscrew it and pull it apart. And so I do that so you can put the model on top, you can screw the collar down, and it's solid. But if you ever need to move it, you just unscrew the collar, pop the model right off, move it, and then just put it right back on, screw the collar back, and you're done. No screwdrivers, no weird ways of moving it. I don't get why guys do that, but every guy has his own way of building.
Well, sure. But everybody has their own preferences too. So because you said they even specialize to the point of even making sound. So have you had to teach yourself how to make these sounds, or do you get to just go to some sort of sound bank and download them or purchase them for your models?
Thankfully, I get to go to a sound bank.
Hey, there you go.
Recreating these sounds would be a nightmare. But yeah, there are all kinds of guys who offer sounds in a free domain or a purchase domain that you can just download an MP3, upload it to your circuit board, and it just plays. In whatever sequence you desire. So but yeah, I try not to offer sound or certain lights very much. I try and discourage some of my clients who want that. Because it's really cool. for about 2 months.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's really annoying. It's like, I don't want, please turn that sound off.
And
All
like
these phasers are off. Awesome. Yeah, 2 months later, meh, whatever. I just want it to turn on if I want it to turn on at all.
Right.
So
right.
I try and discourage my clients, like, just go this route. But then if they say, I hear you, but I want the photons, done. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, you want it that way. Okay. I just need to make sure you know that in about 2 months, you're going to be bored of it.
Right. Kind of like that child's toy. Will it just stop?
Yes.
Well, you said Seinfeld earlier. Was that Seinfeld where no, that was another show, but there was an episode of a show where somebody said, please turn it off. It's the noise. Please turn it off. Thank you for joining us today. We're going to resume our interview with Jonathon Marshall next week. Until then, continue to be the geek only you can be, and we'll see you next time.